What does your writing day look like? Oh God, well, or maybe a bit of shame, maybe a bit of humiliation. It's time to write. So today I was inspired by an interview in the latest Paris Review. These come out every season. So this is autumn and it's wonderful. I highly recommend you subscribing. So this is an interview with Penelope Lively, and the question was, what does your writing day look like? And I thought that's a really good theme, because when she answered that question, it made something really clear to me. A lot of the time, if I ask a client that question, there isn't a very specific response. It's a kind of, oh God, well, or maybe a bit of shame, maybe a bit of humiliation, maybe a sense of, I don't even know. But when Penelope is asked that question, she just straight away goes into, I come down and have breakfast, then be at my desk by about 9:30. So her writing day looks regular, it looks dedicated. So how can we create that regularity, that dedication, so that we know what our writing day looks like and it's there for us and it's there in a way that we can talk about with pride? So I've come up with 2 exercises which were inspired by a comment that Penelope makes a little bit later on. So she's talking about how long she writes for, she's talking about the best time that she finds for writing, also how she juggles her time. But one thing that was interesting, I think her husband or her partner must be called Jack. She says here, Jack always interrupts. He never sees writing as a sacred activity. So I sort of want to have a little look about what's going on there. This idea that if we don't make writing a sacred activity for ourselves, we will allow people to come in and interrupt. If something's really sacred, there's a sense of, no, you don't get to come in here because I'm doing my thing. And this thing that I'm doing is totally sacred. So what do we need to be telling people so that they know that? And also, what do we need to be feeling about our writing so that it is sacred to us? So that's what we're going to be exploring with the exercises today. So 2 minutes for each one. So the first prompt, what would it take to make writing a sacred activity? What would it take to make writing a sacred activity? Off you go. Okay. So how did you get on with that one? What's it going to take for you to make writing a sacred activity? So to me, I went straight in with the idea of a ritual. In my shamanic practice, I know that ritual and ceremony are really powerful for the way that they communicate to the subconscious brain. So when we're making a ritual out of something, we're sending a lot of positive message to that subconscious part of the brain, which is where habit is formed and maintained. So by bringing in a ceremony and a ritual to my writing practice, which is what I've done, I think is probably the main reason that I'm able to maintain a daily writing practice. I write every morning straight after breakfast, and I write 1,000 words, and it feels like a really beautiful act. So for me, it was essentially observing that because I've created that ritual and ceremony, making specific drinks, sitting in a specific chair, using a very specific notebook and pencil, I'll often light a candle or I'll put some oil on to burn. So lots of ritual aspects to really make it into that ceremonial practice. And I also observed that it's sacred even when I'm not writing. And that to me was the biggest insight I got. So when I'm not writing, I'm thinking of it in a really sacred way. So again, just observe the way you're thinking about writing when you're not. Are you giving yourself a hard time about it? Are you thinking about it in a negative or positive way? If the majority of the time that you spend when you're not writing is thinking badly of your writing, how sacred is that space that you're creating? So it's not just in the space, but also the time around it as well that can be really important. Okay, so that's having a look at turning writing into a sacred activity. I want to look at this idea now of how we are communicating that to other people. This Jack who doesn't feel like it's a worthwhile activity and who will come in and interrupt. So it's about how you're talking about your writing, how you're communicating it. So again, have a little think. The prompt for this second exercise is, how do you need to talk about your writing to give it a place in your day? Okay, so how do you need to talk about your writing to give it a place in your day? 2 minutes, off you go. Okay. So how do you need to talk about your writing? What really struck me is how positive this paragraph is. And that often when I start working with a client, the way that they are talking about their writing is with a sense of frustration, with a sense of doubt, with a sense of futility. So if that's the way you're talking about your writing, how is it going to be something that you turn up for every day? I wrote about how I would talk about it as something I love, something I'm making progress in, something I show up for. So for me, in my head, I was thinking, oh, well, this is all very positive, but what for those writers out there for whom this isn't true? And I suppose what I want to say is it will only become true when you make it true. So find a way to talk about your writing in the positive. Whatever small thing you can find to say. Maybe it's one sentence that you know that you wrote that you felt you absolutely nailed it. So if we're not talking about it with love, with positivity, it's not going to be something that we give a place to in our day. We're just not going to want to meet it. And actually, I put right at the very end, I would talk about it as a place that I can always find. It's waiting for me every day to meet it for that brief time, a lover waiting. And it was really lovely to think about it like that, as this beautiful reciprocal activity that is there for me. And yeah, if it's there, this lover waiting, you're damn straight that I'm going to show up and meet it. So there we go. A lovely couple of exercises that are really going to help you shape your writing day, because unless you give it shape and form and regularity, it's just not going to be there and those projects are not going to get finished. So wishing you all the very best, taking these insights into the week ahead, and I will be right here at this table to start to unpick the next obstacle. I'll see you then.